Hi, it's Paul Banis with GreatDad.com, and we are here with our weekly series of podcasts with fellow dads addressing common and not so uncommon problems. And today I've got Bill Miles with me, and we're revisiting something that we revisit maybe on a quarterly basis, which is the subject of divorce and how it affects kids, how you can get through it in maybe the least painful way possible. So welcome, Bill.
Thank you very much, Paul. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
So you run a media company and are working right now on content after I guess a part of your lifetime of learning of being a divorced dad with kids, and have launched a website, bestselfintuitivedivorce.com, that has information on how to deal with divorce. Today we're going to be talking about how dads specifically can try to avoid some of the pitfalls and have the least bad divorce that they can have. I mean, there's no good divorce for the kids, obviously, but yes. I think as parents, we all kind of, if we have to deal with divorce, one of the major concerns is our kids, the health of our kids, our relationship with our kids. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
That sounds great. That's perfect.
So I actually, my parents were separated when I was about 2 and were divorced by the time I was 4. So I have some personal experience with this. And I think in our conversation beforehand, we touched on some of these things which were very meaningful for me. Thankfully, right now thankfully I'm not divorced, but I think some of these same lessons we're going to talk about are good for any parent in any relationship with a co-parent, and how you deal with the kids.
Many of them, in fact, many of the principles are great for any parents together or separated. I mean, just fundamentals of child psychology and how to best nurture them through different stages of their life. But it becomes especially profound in the context of divorce because the stakes are just so high.
Yeah. Why don't you mention just for a minute your life credentials, if you will, about when you the age of your kids now who are in their 20s, but how this you got 3 kids of your own and what they went through at the time.
Yeah, and I'll keep that part pretty brief. But I went through divorce in my 40s about 18 years ago with 3 kids. At that point, they were 5, 8, and 10 years old, and it was a pretty ugly, what one would call a toxic divorce. All the way through. And unfortunately, it still lingers even today. My partner in this business, Kristen Noel, also had a similar thing. She has 1 child, and around the same time went through another very different circumstances, but another dramatic divorce. Her son at that point was 4. So we ended up meeting each other about a year later. And have kind of been together ever since. So we kind of blended our families. But the point on that is that we have witnessed how the children absorb the energy and the circumstances of divorce and the behavior of parents, and how that manifests at different stages in the childhood, including adulthood, as all of our kids now are between 22 and 29 years old. So we've really seen a lot and learned a lot in that process. We also, in our own journey of healing from this divorce, we ended up fascinated by self-empowerment and just learning all kinds of personal development strategies. We founded Best Self Media and Best Self Magazine in the space of holistic health and conscious living. So that gave us a foundation. But more recently, we've had this pressing desire to help parents in divorce because there is so much truly unnecessary suffering that happens because parents can't get out of their own way and see the light for it. And we want to help the parents and the children through that. So that's why we've started this part.
Yeah, and I assume there's a lot more information on the relationship, intentional divorce, how to get through the things with your soon-to-be ex-partner too, independent of what we're going to be talking about with the kids.
Exactly. But one of the big focuses is, of course, the children, because that's every parent's largest concern for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as you have kids, I know. I mean, one of the jokes, even when they're a little baby, is what am I going to do today that's going to send them into therapy 20 years from now? So
And
divorce
and
is,
we will all do something for sure.
whether it's what we think it is or not. Yes, that's true.
But the more we can be at least awake and approach life and our actions with our eyes open and our ears open and just be conscious, the better odds we have of them.
And I think that's a really important point before we get into them, that I think it's really important, is it's not a pass fail test on a daily basis. It's an ongoing scorecard, and you can be not a great dad one day and be a great dad the next day. You're obviously trying to be the best dad, spouse, parent, partner, or whatever it is of every aspect of your life as often as you can. But all these rules are, while they're the concepts we're going to talk about, even while they're important, if you don't always live up to them, you didn't ruin the kid, right?
You didn't ruin a kid, and you didn't fail as a parent. I mean, you got to understand that too. And even divorce is one of the things we teach our clients, or help them realize it's not a failure. There's cause and effect, and in a divorce, both sides play a role, even if it seems one-sided from the obvious flashpoint of what may cause a divorce. There's a role in both sides, and it's important to be circumspect about that. And yes, so as far as the kids go, it's a process. You're never going to be perfect. No parent is perfect. We can hopefully not continue the cycle of some of the issues that we may have grown up with, but we'll create some more of our own.
Yeah.
There's a funny line that I always like, which is, you try and do everything you can as a parent, give your children all, everything you can. And in the end, you just hope that they'll forgive you.
Yeah. And every day is an opportunity for learning and change. So let's go through these 5 different areas with the idea of some of them being maybe fairly obvious, but then what the thinking is behind them, and how you can kind of internalize those if you are unfortunately in this situation, or even if you're not. I mean, I think all these are good rules, even for dads who are in happy marriages.
Yeah, they totally are. So this list is not complete by any means. There are many things, but these are 5 very common themes that they're pitfalls that parents fall into, even with the best intentions, and that we've learned with our clients really make a difference if dads can be aware of these things. So I'll start off with the sort of the obvious one. It doesn't need a whole lot of discussion, but it's don't disparage your ex. Don't disparage the mother. However evil or toxic, or however angry you may be about whatever happened, or whatever feelings you may harbor personally, it's not ever going to help the child to express them in that way. And that doesn't mean you're not honest. And I'll get to that one. That's actually number 2. But it does mean that you don't gratuitously admonish, disparage them. And it's very easy for for a dad to say, well, I don't do that. I don't call her a, blah, 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 or whatever in front of my kids. But it may fall into a trap of a lot of eye rolls, that happen, a lot of nuances, a lot of body language when a topic comes up or something comes up, or say your child comes to you and says, well, mom was thinking about, this, or this for summer, or this for school, or something like that. And then you go, oh God, here she goes again. That sort of response is a form of disparagement.
Yeah.
And of course, some
people, it's difficult to avoid. And I think especially if something is being done within the context of the divorce that is hurtful to you financially, emotionally, or whatever, or if the child is complaining about the other partner, and it's something is their fault, and in the context of wanting to be supportive of them, you're actually dragging the partner down lower. It's a huge temptation,
and it happens much more often than not. It's a huge temptation, and this is the thing: kids are hardwired to love both parents. They just are. It's in their biological DNA. And when you try and derail that with disparaging, gratuitous comments, it only hurts them. It only is like this throwing a wrench in their, their engine. How to make sense of that and so forth. There's nothing good that comes out of that. Mm-hmm. And it can backfire on you because in time, and we've seen this as kids grow up, we've watched it, they can turn. You may get away with it. It may feel good, those snarky comments in the short term. They may even side with you or laugh with you or something. It's not ever good. So I don't necessarily want to beat that one to death, but it's a biggie. Yeah. There's never really a justification for disparaging the other parent in a gratuitous way.
Yeah. Okay. The second one is honesty. And
that's so that is kind of a good segue to number 2, which is to honor honesty always with how you communicate with your kids. Truth telling is really important. And the caveat, of course, is that your communication needs to be age appropriate, right? If there was infidelity involved, your young child does not need to know the sort of details of what happened, right? That's just not going to be a benefit. But it's also not going to benefit them to deny, especially if they bring it up, but to deny, what happened. So for a young kid, just carrying that example, you might say, you have, as a child, many friends. Sometimes adults find that they want to have more than one really close friend, or however you want to do that. You kind of broach it in a way that they maybe can understand. I mean, there's some things you don't have to bring. It doesn't mean like you have to spill everything up front right away. But when the topics come, just give truth. Don't build a lie into it. Because this is what happens. If
when your child asks you a direct question, don't try to make up a Santa Claus story to cover.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I know, well, one person who's, in one case, the husband did something pretty atrocious, and the mother was, maybe embarrassed and wanted to lie about what happened, right? It's just not a good plan. Or maybe the husband actually wanted to lie because he didn't want the child knowing that or something, right, and asked the mother to support that. It just falls short because they may buy it in the moment, but then you've got to build on it, and you can only build on truth. And the other thing is that kids pick up energetically everything. They're sponges. So there's so much unsaid communication that happens in the house, and there has to be congruency there. You can't speak one thing and then the energy, the feeling, your reactions to things speak to something else. Because if the kids don't know the story, they will create a story to make sense. And that story in their mind will often be far worse or more damaging to them than the real story. Mm. So that's number 2, just truth telling.
Yep. Okay.
Whatever level you can do it.
Number 3 is a favorite of mine. So
what's that?
Number 3 is a favorite of mine.
Okay. So this is a biggie, and it does require a little more conversation, but being present with your kids. And this one sounds like easy to digest, but it's really not, because this is what happens. It's very busy, especially if you are at a point in divorce where you're single parenting. It's either your time with the kids, you've got separate homes, whatever. Life can get very, very busy. You've got, 2, 3, 4, extra mouths to feed. They've got to get dressed. They got to get showered. They got to get off to school. You've got sports events to go to. You've got 100 things going on. Not to mention managing all the aspects of the divorce that are happening as well and unfolding. And it's easy to have them watch television, have them just go play by themselves. Have them, maybe out of guilt, you want to go buy them toys or treat them to something, excessive or unnecessary. So my point is, do the work to actually make time to be present with them, because what children really need, they don't need toys. They don't need more screen time. They need you, especially in divorce. They need your love and they need your presence.
Yeah, even though they will tell you the opposite is true.
Well, that is true. And that doesn't mean, no, Johnny, you can't go have a sleepover with your friends tonight. Absolutely. You want their lives to be as normal as possible. You want to encourage that kind of thing. But it's more about when they're in, when you have time with them. And, if you are preparing dinners and so forth, invite them in, make it a family thing, work. I started doing that with my kids when they were young. It's like, okay, we're here together anyway. Instead of you, watching TV or whatever it is, come in here and help me cook.
Yeah.
And my children, mealtime is really important to us now, even as adults. Like, we really love to cook together. And they love cooking, and it's just really important. As it turns out, their mother never really cared about mealtime, never cared about family dinners, never cooked. I was one that really did that.
That's a value for you, yeah.
And it became really important. So family dinners became, even though I might have pushed it on them a little when they would rather do other things early on, later in life, and not even as adults, but as teens, as like mid-teens, they really wanted that.
Yeah.
It's like, thank God we can just sit together and have dinner. We don't get to do that, at the other home or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think that the whole presence thing is obviously a huge part of anybody's successful relationships, is being present. I think the concept is just it's so large and yet so amorphous for so many people, because most people like I'm in the room, and then that's being present, right? I mean, but that's not the same thing as focusing on the fact that your kids are there, looking at them, engaging with them, trying to understand what's important to them, getting the touch points. All that takes a kind of a different level of appreciation of the fact that you're together, not side by side in the same room, present, literally present, but present.
And for example, as you are asking questions, you sit down at dinner, how was your day? How was school?
Yeah.
I mean, it's great that you inquire, but I'll also say that's anything they can answer with one word is not a great question. Fine. Good, bad, yes, no.
Yeah.
How about,
I think
tell me what anything happened that you struggled with today? Perhaps with a friendship or one of the classes or a teacher or anything like that? What happened that got you really excited today? What did you feel good about yourself? What made you feel good today?
Yeah.
Those kind of questions it shows that you're actually interested in even more than just a casual, how was school, to pass the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I go one step deeper, is that when in any relationship, most people want to say, how are you? Or, that type of thing, because it comes off as just like, it's what we do, our pleasantries.
Right.
But kids especially, they may not be able to articulate it, but the more that you can dig in and say, you told me about Mrs. Adams yesterday, she was really hard on you. How did it go today? Or you had a play date afterwards. I know, or I know you had a theater performance, whatever it is that about your kids that is concrete, that shows that you're with them in their day and their struggles, is going to bring you closer. And that's part of actively being present, so that you're not just spouting the lines, but you're demonstrating that you're close to them.
100%. And it has another benefit, because as a parent, you want to be watchful for how their behavior is playing out outside of the home, right? Because when you're going through divorce, especially, children, they start acting out, and it could come in the form of withdrawing, or getting angry, or getting violent, or falling off in your schoolwork, or becoming obsessive about. They're just changes. So if you talk to them, and maybe you get a vibe that something isn't going so well in gym class or whatever, or with a particular friend, and then you pursue that a little more, and you learn that friend is teasing them because of divorce or whatever it is, then you can start addressing that, right? If you just say, how's school? It was fine. You never get that opportunity.
Yeah, I'm really glad you bring that up, especially when you start hitting teenage kids and the potential for self-harm, drugs, sex, all the things that people can go to in times.
That's exactly right.
Feeling that personal stress. I mean, I'm sure you can relate to the fact that I've had moments where I look at my kids and I feel like I have a pretty good relationship with them, but you sometimes just look at them and you say, what if I'm missing some, huge block? And all they've been telling me is just a story, that they're, going over a sleepover, but they're not really, one of those things where you just have like, I think I'm doing it right. But that's why it's so important to be as in touch as you can, because if you are blissfully just listening to, yeah, everything is great, Dad, you might be in for a sad and not great surprise.
And sometimes that listening, they may not use words but just the way they respond to things may have some red flags going up. Like, I better check with their guidance counselor and see if things are okay at school or whatever.
Yeah. I do coaching, and that's one of the things that we were trained on really is to notice not only the words, but the facial expressions where you sense, especially where you sense resonance, but it can go the other way too. If you hear the words, yes, fine, but the look is sadness, that they don't, they're unintentionally expressing that sadness or their body language or whatever, that's also part of being present.
100%. And the teenage years can be difficult because even in the best of households, teenagers can get very moody. They can get very isolated. They'll only talk to their friends. I mean, I think any parent with a teenager knows that. Yeah. You're driving them to school, it can be a very silent road trip, Like, oh my God, don't you talk? Been together for 16 years and now you don't even say hello or whatever. But it's it really, it never ends. But it's just important to be as present as you can. And just know, another thing is tap into your creativity. And this sometimes for a dad is a challenge. It's I don't know. It's easy to just like take your kids to the movies, maybe throw the ball back and forth and so forth. And that can all be fun, and certainly engaging in sports is a great thing. But sometimes just try and be even more creative. Like, instead of directing what the activities are, see what they might want to do. What about a walk in nature? What about, one of our clients was telling me the other day about the archaeological dig that their young son went on, which means going to the park and looking for sticks that maybe look like bones and putting them together to maybe make a dinosaur or something like that. Yeah. And it was like hours of entertainment for the son, and something that just kind of opened up organically because she kind of put her usual things to do in her time with her son to rest and just let things open up. Yeah. And I thought it was a beautiful story. Didn't cost anything, just required her presence. And
well, we do a whole podcast on alternate ideas, going to the parties, whatever together. Yeah. All right, moving on to 4 is kind of related to the first one. It's about picking sides.
It is, but it is different. So number 4 is don't try and tell or compel your children how to feel. So this is emotions, and it's different than disparaging the parent, because it's really you can fall into a trap, and I've done it. I think most parents have a hard time avoiding it, where they'll tell you something and you go, well, did that piss you off, or did that get you upset, or that must be pretty sad, right? I mean, I'm sorry that hurts so much when you don't know it did yet. These kinds of things. And kids will feel what they feel. And it may be anger, and it may be resentment, and it may be joy, and it may be all kinds of things. But you have to honor what they feel and not try and tell them not to. Going back to the example, if, say, you as a husband feel wronged by your ex, right? And your child comes to you and says, I really love mommy. She's you know, she seems to really care about something or other. And then you go in and say, yeah, but doesn't it piss you off that she did this? You know, I would be very resentful if that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're trying to shape their feelings. And that again is really, it's really damaging to them.
Mm-hmm.
They will, because they're going to feel what they feel anyway, words aside. And what it's going to teach them is that they don't feel safe to express themselves to daddy. If daddy dismisses my feelings or glosses it over with, you know, kind of conflates his own opinion on that, then I'm not heard.
Yeah.
Or if that makes daddy angry that I said that, then I'm not going to say that anymore because I don't want daddy to be angry.
Right.
Right. So, and it's not saying don't be human in who you are, but it's just being in check about it. Just don't, okay, you thought, I'm glad that you love your mom, right? That's great. I actually want you to love your mom. And so I want to encourage that.
Yeah.
Now, there may be specific things that come to surface that are just not okay. And that can come out at a different time, at different situations, you know, when the facts start to unfold. And there may be things that they challenge you on as well. And to just say, we can't talk about that. Well, obviously, there's some things that are age appropriate you're not going to talk about. But to just shut them down when they're inquiring or when they're expressing is definitely a road, especially if they're young, to have a complete shutdown when they're teenagers.
Mm-hmm. So we were
And
talking
honestly,
about the value of asking without giving your own opinion, asking them open-ended questions to try to get more
yes,
out of them rather than, like you say, trying to manipulate their feelings or suggest their feelings are incorrect or that they should have a different type of feeling.
So what kids need more than anything is to feel safe. This is a very unsafe time in their life. Everything they've known is being blown apart. It's not safe to be around mom and dad when they fight. It's not safe to now have to navigate two houses. It's not safe to, I don't know who I'm supposed to love. I don't know how I'm supposed to react. You know, all this. I don't know how I'm supposed to go into school and face my friends who may have judgments about this. It's very unsafe. And so your job is to make them feel as safe as possible. And part of, obviously, the physical safety is obvious, but the emotional safety is what I'm really getting at. That they're safe to express who they are, to be who they are, to disagree, to feel differently than you.
Yeah.
Acting out bad behavior, of course, you can't really tolerate that. You can correct behavior without correcting, you know, okay, you feel that way, I get that. That doesn't mean it's okay to punch your brother, you know, but, you know, it's managing that.
Yeah, I got to tell you, even at my age, I can still remember times when both my mother and my father said things that weren't even wildly disparaging. But I think your point is really true, is that the child's natural reaction is to love their mother and father and give their mother and father, at least until they're, you know, later on, the benefit of the doubt, because they do hold that role, but is to defend that person or be angry and resentful at the implication, even if it's true, even if they know some of the stuff is true, they don't want to hear it out of mommy and daddy as opposing forces. And
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to get enough of that anyway. I mean, it's just, there's going to be some of that. So, and they'll feel it. Just want to, you know, all of these things are just becoming more aware with how you interact with your kids.
Right.
At things that it's very easy. Look, divorce is really stressful, right? We're becoming kind of fight or flight mode. We're easily triggered. We have knee-jerk reactions, more so even for the calmest of us. It'll be like, what? She did what now? Are you kidding me? It's just going to happen.
Yep.
And sometimes you're at your wit's end and it's like, Sarah, shut up. I don't want to hear it now, you know? So it's going to happen. Don't beat yourself up, but don't make it your MO. And you can go back and clean it up and say, hey, Sarah, I'm sorry. I shut you down when you had something important to say. I was just in the middle of things. I couldn't give you the attention, but now I have time and I want to give you the attention. Can we talk about it?
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
So the last one, ties back to these as well, but again, it's a different angle on it, and that's to not pick a team, or I should say, don't ask your children to pick a team, to pick a side.
Mhm.
You're on mommy's side, you're on daddy's side, you're on my side versus, mommy's side. And that again is different than disparaging. It's this idea that you are doing things, that the way you're doing it is better than the way mom is doing it. You may be very organized and your mom is like scattered, or maybe it's vice versa. Maybe their mom is too uptight and too obsessive organized and makes everybody nervous. And you're the one who's like sloppy, and that's just better because everybody just goes with the flow. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm not
There's always a
value judgments on that. I'm just saying that to say, don't you like it better here because we do this than it was over there? Isn't, that kind of thing. Don't pick a team. Don't make, they will make their own judgments. They may decide they do like to be organized and have their things set up. And we have one client where that's the case. Our client happens to be the organized one, and the X is the free flow one that's always rushing to get him up to the door to school and so forth. And it's like, okay, why don't you tell your son, who's only 5, you can bring some of these habits into her house, right? You can bring some of these habits over to the other house. If you like laying your clothes out the day before, and that's never occurred to your mom to do that, go over there and just do it. Do it on your own.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that I think obviously happens a lot is, especially if one of the parents has more financial resources or maybe more free time, we're going on a ski vacation during the week that I have for you, whereas the other party doesn't have the money or the time,
Yes.
and then is stuck with I'm the lousy parent, or what your mother can't do these things for you, or daddy doesn't have, he's not willing to take the time or whatever, and that in itself is dangerous in the same vein.
That is dangerous. Now, that of course will exist. There are going to be disparities in time or resources and so forth. And it may be advantageous for the children to be at one end of that or the other. I mean, maybe some kids don't want to be out traveling all the time or whatever. They just want to be home with their kids. With their friends. Maybe they do enjoy that. So it, again, without adding judgment to it, but how do you approach that? How do you try and strip a judgment to that? And that's tricky.
Yeah.
Because if, for example, my ex had greater resources to do things than I did, how do you handle that? It may actually hurt me, So
yeah,
I
know it's used as a power play all the time. I know it's not my week to take the kids, but I have an opportunity to take them to the Bahamas. And are you going to say no to that? Because I already told them that I have this opportunity. And then where do you go? That's the kind of thing I think is fraught with problems, even for the person who wins the battle, but loses.
There is. And that's a really interesting example because it's a little more advanced co-parenting at that point. But when that happens, the person who's not going to the Bahamas, that parent may say, no, that's my time with the kids. That's what's in our legal document. If you take the kids and don't let me have them, we're going to court. That's it. They can hold that.
Yeah.
But they risk the kids resenting them. It's like, Dad, this is a once in a lifetime thing, or once in a year, whatever it is. You really, so then you risk alienating the kids too. Yeah. My approach to that is really always, let's be a little fluid. Okay. Sure. We have a divorce agreement, but let's be a little fluid. Okay. You have something special you want to do with your kids for that particular week that's supposed to be mine. Why don't I take the kids, another week, a month later or whatever, and that'll be our chance to do something.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
I think the basic idea behind all these principles is that both parents are going to rise to the extent that they can to the occasion and be better than the temptation. So, but what in all these, I think is fraught with the fact that one spouse might be the person who tries to it tries to do the good thing, and the other person is, and maybe that's why the divorce happened, is that they are good at manipulating, taking advantage, being the toxic parent, throwing the gasoline on the fire, doing all the things that we basically just said to avoid doing. How do you deal with that, or what advice do you give for that?
On which side?
Well, if you are the person who wants to be the better person, and think about the mental health of your children and the love for their other co-parent, but you keep on getting taken advantage of in whatever way.
Well, this was my story, honestly, of the toxic relationship. You have to swallow a lot.
Yeah.
And there's a fine line between the high road and being a doormat.
Yep.
And only time will tell how that settles out. For me, I always just wanted to take the high road. And just, I would take the slings and arrows, and again, try and not disparage, try and not weaponize our divorce agreement against turning the kids against her. No, you can't have time to do that because that's my time. But yet I do get to have my time, and that's important. So there are times it's tricky.
I
mean, that's really tricky. You want to, at least I would encourage people to take the high road as much as you can, but also to discern when you're being a doormat. Sometimes you just have to say, no, I've given you too much leash. This is what has happened. I'm not going to allow that to happen anymore.
Yeah, and there are usually legal parameters around that. I guess my perspective would be, especially as a coach, since we spend a lot of time talking about values and fulfillment through your values, living your best life through your values, independent of, millions of dollars and houses and boats and all the rest, is when you're out of sync with your values, you will be a less happy and less effective person. So even if you are the doormat to some degree, and I agree, there is a line. That's why there are legal documents around it. If you can be as true to yourself, you're going to be. Maybe you feel like a victim sometimes, and maybe feel like you've been taken advantage of, but you will at the end of the day feel happier that you did the right things.
Paul, you're spot on with that.
And the other thing 100%. Is it's a long game. I talk to therapists about this. It is a long game. They tell me that the kids are not stupid. Six vacations in the Bahamas that took advantage of dad's time that he had, or manipulated situations. They are aware of that, and they know at the at midlife, later on in life, how that other parent reacted in the situation. So it's cold comfort in the moment because you're not getting what you want. You're feeling bad. You're feeling like you've lost opportunities to get close to kids. But some of this is karma, and it works out in the wash. And
you just hit, and that's a great way to kind of wind this up. But that's the big thing. It is a long game, and being aligned with who you are and your values is everything. And victimhood, blame, anger, resentment all cloud that.
Yeah,
they really do. You may, hate your ex. You may have really, strong anger about it, or resentment, or whatnot. But what are your values for the kids? And what are your values for how you carry yourself and how you want to model behavior for the kids? Look, I had a son who, after when I was taking whatever, it doesn't matter, going on some drive, he said, Dad, why do you put up with all the mom's bullshit? Why do you do that? And I had to really pause. And I said, because this is what I believe is best for you guys in the long run. And you may not see it now, but in the long run, I hope you do. Yeah. And you may never. And I may not be right on that, but these are my values, and this is what I stand by.
Yep.
And they may, always think that maybe I was a doormat. I know other of my children who have said, I realize now, Dad, that what you did during divorce was much harder standing up for what you felt was a lot harder than giving in or fighting.
Yeah.
Or getting down into the dirt and fighting dirty.
Yeah.
And thank you. You know, and that is a son who, when he said that, was 23 years old.
Yeah.
So it comes around, you know. It is a long game. You're absolutely right. And there is no winning and losing. The only losing comes in the children, really. But that's not exactly true, because you can lose yourself. Yeah. And I will say this one other thing that's less about the kids. But if you're going through divorce, you have to make sure, it's very easy to lose your own self-care and your own prioritization in deference to what the kids need. Mm-hmm. And thank you, making all the decisions for the kids and making concessions so that you can end the divorce quickly, whatever it is, but things that don't feel right to you, things maybe you can't even financially commit to, even though you agree to it in the divorce, it comes back to bite you. Yeah. You have to honor yourself and your values, like you said, and also your self-care. You have to tend to yourself, or you can't really be your best self for your kids either. So, yeah.
Well, these are really very helpful, and like I say, I think that some of them, maybe they're kind of obvious, but they're also something that you have to keep in mind all the time. You have to keep them in mind all the time, and make sure that they aren't lost.
Yeah, it's really it's quite an exploration. And you know, I hope the dads out there that are listening to this, I hope most of you don't have to go. I hope none of you have to go through this, because divorce is ugly. But if you do find yourself in these shoes, it doesn't mean that divorce is a bad thing for your life. And if you happen to be going through it, I would encourage you to see the opportunity there. Yeah. You know, however angry you may be about it or sad you may be about it, it's ending for a reason. Maybe obvious, maybe not so obvious, but there is a really bright light ahead.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to go out and get some help. There's we're lucky we live in an age where there is a lot more going on in terms of help, from therapy to coaching to sites like yours, where there's a lot of
the program we're doing. I wish that this was available. Right. You know, when I was going through divorce, there weren't things like divorce coaches then, at least not that anyone was talking about. Even one decision that I would have made differently, and there are hundreds I would make differently if I had somebody kind of guiding me through the process emotionally, really, would have literally saved me $50,000 just like that. You know, so I mean, like the investment as a divorce coach would have been peanuts compared to the benefits, not to mention all the long-term emotional benefits for the kids, and on and on and on. So yeah, I agree. Yep. There are child psychologists out there, which can be really helpful. Of course, you're probably going to need attorneys, but coaching can be a fabulous asset to you as well.
Okay, so your website is bestselfintuitivedivorce.com. That's also part of bestselfmedia.com. You can get to it from there if that's easier.
Yep, you certainly
can. Put it in the show notes. Everybody's got it. Yep. Bill, it's really been a pleasure talking with you. Brings up a lot of emotions for me as a child of divorce, and luckily have been able to avoid it so far in my own family. But all these principles are really important for any kind of relationship, and appreciate you sharing them with us.
Thank you for having me on. I love talking about this, because I just want to help dads.
I can tell your relationship with your kids and there is of primary importance to you, and it's a beautiful value to have, and I appreciate it. So you can find more about my coaching services at paulbaniscoaching.com, paulbaniscoaching.com, or at GreatDad.com/coaching. And until next time, have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.